Today is the 11,625th of December 1979. Just a few points about history that need to be corrected. In 1820, Augustus de Morgan was not discovered by the family friend copying Euclid's Elements. As a result, there was no Moore's law, and IT is currently at a late 70s level. In 1907, Otto Spangler successfully marketed the domestic vacuum cleaner and didn't sell his intellectual property rights to Hoover. As a result, John Lennon was not assassinated. In the 1910s, Ted Grant's parents stayed together. As a result, the post-war consensus continued. In 1918, the third secret of Fatima was lost, with the last shepherdess dying in the 1918 flu epidemic. As a result, the Roman Catholic Church is liberal and allows contraception, and there is no AIDS in the developed world. In 1948, Malcolm McLaren's parents stayed together, and as a result, there was no punk, prog rock continued, and pop music is completely different. On the 24th of May 1954, Papa-Doc Duvalier correctly judged his insulin dose. As a result, did not become a paranoid dictator of Haiti, and the AIDS did not enter North America. In the 1970s, the UK agreed to a co-dominion with Argentina on the Malvinas, or the Falkland Islands, and as a result there was no Falklands factor, and Margaret Thatcher's government was a one-term government failure. On the 27th of August 1979, Lord Louis Mountbatten's wife persuaded him not to go out lobster fishing in Sligo, and as a result there is a King Charles III and Queen Elizabeth II abdicated in 1983. On the 30th of January 1981, Ronald Reagan was assassinated. His place was taken by George Bush Sr., and again there was a one-term government, and Reaganomics died in 1984 when the Democrats won. Those are the changes which I think are necessary for the 1970s to continue. To people of my age, we are Generation Xers, the change in history that seems to have occurred around 1979 time feels like a veer away from the normal course of history. So there was the post-war consensus, which apparently is partly an illusion, and there is then a kink in history and things go the other way, and things happen like monetarism, Thatcherism, Reaganomics and so forth, and they go in a different direction. The number of changes you have to make this happen, to make the 70s continue in the same trend and for the future to be like the way people saw it in the 70s, you need something like 9 points of divergence in history for that to happen, some of which are very obscure. The third secret of Fatima one, for example, is not to do with the supernaturalist view of the world, it's to do with the Catholic Church becoming more cautious. The marketing of domestic vacuum cleaners by Otto Spangler means that the hose used in the vacuum cleaner in the late 70s that Mark Chapman used to attempt to commit suicide would have been stronger, and his suicide attempt would have been successful. As a result, John Lennon would have survived because he wouldn't have been shot at that point, and then reformed the Beatles, and other things would have happened. If you want to hear more about this, please go to the link below, because I have written an entire alternate history on that link, which I call the Caroline era. There are various differences there. Moore's law doesn't exist. Instead there's Van der Waals law, which is that the advance of information technology is linear rather than exponential, which means this camera doesn't exist for a start. The post-war consensus continued, and as a result there's been a constant ding-dong of Tory and Labour governments, although eventually that was replaced by Unionist and Federalist governments. Prog rock continued, punk fizzled out, and as a result pop music is completely different, and obviously there are CDs, there are no MP3s or iTunes or anything like that. Various other things happened. There was a continuation of the Cold War, and as a result there was a nuclear holocaust in India and North Africa, and AIDS did not leave Africa, but unfortunately that meant that most of Africa was killed, and the population of the world dropped by about 600 million. Also, South Africa is now much bigger, more successful, and apartheid continues. If you want to hear more about this, please do look at the link, because this has been my attempt to construct an alternate history based on 9 points of divergence from real history to show how difficult it is to get the 1970s style direction of history to continue, and to explain why things are the way they are now as opposed to the way we expected them to be about 30 or 40 years ago.